Welcome back to Games Revealed. I'm James and also The Brink, and today, we need to talk about the absolute chaos happening in the PC hardware world. RAM, actual DDR5 memory, is now so expensive that some 64GB kits cost more than a PlayStation 5. Nah, not clickbait, not a joke. This is real 2025 memory market.
Jesus, why is it so expensive here?
This is the whole year, right? Like, it's been a crazy year, and this is just another roller coaster for us. PC gamers and any other type of gamers, I guess, that need RAM. So today we're breaking down why RAM prices have skyrocketed, how it affects PC gamers, how it hits handheld PCs, and why it might actually make Valve's rumored Steam machine look way smarter than anyone expected. All right, let's start with a number that broke my brain. A 64GB DDR kit, like the G-Skill Trident Z5 Neo 6000, that's a mouthful, is currently listed around $600. A little under, right? They like to play the games of 1 cent off. More expensive than a PS5 digital edition at around $399 right now, which I believe is on sale, but PlayStation's really pushing hard to get these units out. And right in the territory of full PS5 bundle pricing. So if you wanted more, or a disc or drive or whatnot, like you could pay for a console or some RAM. Now, that being said, 64GB is a lot. It's not like the PS5 has that much RAM in it, but still, that means your RAM, just your RAM, can now cost more than a whole gaming console. But here's the nuance. Not all RAM is that dramatic. A 32GB DDR kit, your normal 16GB configuration, that's running around $180 to $250. Still pricey, way more expensive than earlier this year, but not quite console money. So RAM being more expensive than PS5 moment is true, but it applies to the high-end 64GB kits, not everyday configuration. And honestly, 64 is a little overkill for a lot of gamers. 32 it's a nice sweet spot. For me, I do a lot of stuff with my computer, like a lot. 64 is like minimum these days. Honestly, 128 or even 96 gigs is starting to get into that's about right realm for me. So why RAM prices are exploding? Here's what's really happening. Reason one, AI is eating all the memory up. Data centers, AI servers are buying memory faster than manufacturers can produce it. HBM, DDR5, LPD, DDR5X, everything is being redirected to AI. Then reason two is DRAM contract prices jumped insanely fast. Reports show DRAM pricing has surged 171% year over year in Q3. That's not inflation. That's a market upheaval. Reason three, manufacturers are not increasing production. Samsung, SK, Hynix, and Micron are playing conservative. Less production means higher prices and longer shortages, and including Micron's not in the game anymore. Reason four, GDDR7 and next-gen memory are in a bidding war. Everything from GPUs to future handhelds want GDDR7. Demand is greater than supply, and then prices go vertical. They go up. So yeah, this isn't a temporary oops. This is a real structural shortage that could last into 2027, 2028. Samsung, a big producer of RAM, does not want to increase supply. They want to, because they don't want to, increase supply, increase facilities to then have it in a couple of years shrink back down, because maybe they even think the AI bubble might happen, like burst, that is. And so I have on one side, I'm assuming that's what's happening. The other side, we just don't have competition, is what it also feels like. With proper competition, they get into the game, start driving prices down again. How this hits handheld PCs like the Legion Go, Ally X, Ion Neo. Handheld PCs, they get hit especially hard because they all use shared unified memory. CPU and GPU sharing the same pool means you need fast, high-capacity RAM for performance. But with prices exploding, fewer 32GB models, more 16GB models, higher MSRPs everywhere, worse iGPU bandwidth performance, less future-proofing. Meanwhile, Steam Deck is just sitting in the corner like, bro, I was optimized for 16GB before it was cool. I guess kind of a little cheesy, but Steam Deck is looking pretty good. SteamOS avoids a lot of the chaos because it doesn't need brute force of RAM. Like, it doesn't use as much RAM as Windows does. And this leads us right into the Steam machine. Why the Steam machine memory layout looks brilliant now. So here's the fun part. Valve's rumored new Steam machine is running 16 gigabytes of system RAM, 8 gigabytes of dedicated RAM, VRAM that is, and while that might sound lower than some handhelds flexing 32 or 64 gigs, it actually looks genius in the context of 2025's RAM crisis, and it could be why we haven't seen prices for the Steam machine yet. So reason one behind all this, dedicated VRAM fixes the biggest handheld problem. Windows handhelds all suffer from shared memory. Your GPU steals from your system RAM and tanks your bandwidth potentially, and also some games like Dead Space Remake just aren't optimized for unified RAM. But the Steam machine, the GPU has its own 8GB VRAM pool separate from system memory. That means better frame pacing, stable texture performance, predictable GPU budgets, no unified memory bottleneck, console-like reliability. This is literally how the PlayStation and Xbox do it, and for a good reason. Now, reason two, SteamOS makes 16 gigabytes feel like 32 gigabytes. SteamOS is insanely RAM efficient thanks to its Linux kernel. Linux is a big kicker for this, and a lot of system resources, and just the way SteamOS is built. On the Steam Deck, 8 gigabytes is playable, 16 gigabytes is luxurious. With a desktop class APU and dedicated VRAM, your 16 gigabytes system RAM is untouchable by the GPU and managed by an OS that ships overhead. Compare that to Windows. Windows needs 5 to 8 gigs just to open Chrome and breathe. I mean, we're joking around a little bit with this, but honestly, with my tests, like with Bazzite alone, you get a huge increase in performance, and a big part of that is just system process optimization and stuff like that. Reason three, Valve avoided the RAM price hurricane because they aren't using unified 32 gigabytes or 64 gigabytes of RAM. Valve avoids the biggest pricing spikes, the worst supply shortages, the highest bandwidth part costs, the inflationary pressure of DRAM market. While everyone else is drowning in DRAM costs, Valve chose a memory layout that stays stable, and they probably knew what was coming. They know the market. They probably saw it. That's probably a good reason why they went a little cheaper, even though I think a lot of people are not happy with the 16 gigabytes of RAM and 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I wish it was just bumped up just a little bit more for future proofing, but with the tech that's also added into it, like the GPU portion of the APU, it can't really take advantage much more than that. There's some games that would like 10 to 12 gigabytes of VRAM, but for optimization's sake, that it makes sense with the way they went. So a predictable, optimized console-like performance target with these. Exactly what devs want, exactly what users want, exactly what avoids the 2025 memory crisis and the Steam machine jumping up in price next year. Steam doesn't usually price their systems higher, like with the Steam Deck. They usually go a little lower or give you more in a year or two. Like the Steam Deck OLED is not an expensive handheld. They price it similar to the regular Steam Deck, and they have sales all the time. So now for the broader impact, PC gaming feels the pain. Let's be honest, when RAM costs more than a console, you start asking real questions. Pre-built PCs suddenly look affordable. DIY building becomes expensive. Handheld PCs lose pricing power. Console value skyrockets, and SteamOS hardware starts looking genius, honestly. And some of us might just hold on to our computers even a little longer. Like my 3090 is looking pretty sexy down there with all these price increases. This shifts the entire value conversation of PC gaming. So the winners and losers of the RAM spike, winners are like Valve, SteamOS hardware, console manufacturers, pre-built PC makers, Steam Deck users, these types of people, especially that bought early on and built all these systems. Like the Steam machine, most likely there's already, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of units already made or be in the process of being bid out and have RAM allocated to them. So we could still see shortages there because people are going to be rushing to the Steam machine, but it's still a win for Valve in this case. Now, the losers are a lot of us. Like, I like building my own PCs, but yeah, do-it-yourself PC builders, Windows handheld companies, small boutique PC builders, and anyone who needs 64 gigabytes of RAM right now. And honestly, we could be seeing price increases for handhelds. Look, when 64 gigabytes of RAM costs $600, we're officially in a crazy world here. We are inches away from Newegg offering buy one RAM stick, get a free therapist. But the wild thing is, Valve actually saw this coming by looking into 16 gigabytes of system memory. 8 gigabytes of dedicated VRAM, and Steam OS optimizations, they basically avoided the worst part of this crisis. The Steam Machine might end up being the most stable, least volatile gaming PC you can buy next year or even the year after that. And honestly, that's kind of brilliant. And also, it's just going to be good for a lot of people that might want to wait. That being said, you know, saving up an extra $200 or $300 to buy your PC is not the end of the world, but what other things are going to be affected by all these price hikes? There's like tariffs already have shot prices up through the roof.
That would explain why it's so expensive.
So I don't know. It might be a nice time to just bunker down and buy a Steam Machine and just enjoy your next few years until things get back under control, if they ever do. All right, that's the breakdown on why RAM prices are spiking, how it impacts handhelds and PC gaming, and why the Steam Machine might actually come out on top. If this helped, hit that like button, subscribe, and then bash that bell with your crowbar so you don't miss out on when a new video goes out or I go live, because I do stream every Wednesday. And get ready for some more Steam frame fun in my next video, just to tide you over while this RAM situation plays out. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out. Later.